Welcome back. It's been a little while since I've done one of these. Between work and the weather not cooperating or being a nice day on my day that I'm working, I haven't had a whole lot of time to do one of these lately. But it's a nice day today, and figured I'd start another topic I wanted to talk about. First of all, it's Memorial Day weekend. It kind of leads into the topic that I had thought about discussing, because oftentimes Memorial Day weekend is seen as the unofficial start of summer, and especially here in Maine, during the summertime you get a lot of tourists, and usually like around the month of June, especially July, they all start pouring in from all kinds of other states. And motorcycle riding on its own comes with its own inherent risks. It's just one of those things, you know, that you have to deal with while you're riding. You know, there's always that chance that something could happen. So the fact that there's a lot more cars on the road, especially this weekend, because a lot of cars come up here for the long weekend, and they'll be coming up a lot more during the summertime. I wanted to talk about the topic of wearing gear, because it seems to be one of those issues that some people strongly oppose it and other people strongly support it, depending on which side of the fence you fall on. Personally, I always wear gear when I'm riding. That doesn't include just the helmet. I mean, I wear my gloves, my boots, my jacket, my helmet. It's always standard riding gear for me. I don't like to go without it. And a lot of people wear absolutely no gear at all, or just a helmet, you know, or something like that. And I guess the people that don't wear gear oftentimes get the bad rap of being squids, or just in general bad stuff. For those of you that don't know, a squid is someone that, you know, that's perceived as an unsafe rider, doesn't wear gear. It's like your typical rider on a GSXR that, you know, wears sneakers and a tank top and sunglasses. That's a prime example. And I pretty much agree with this for a long time, until recently, and there's only one reason for why I disagree with the fact that people that don't wear gear are not necessarily squids. And that reason is that motorcycle riding often comes with the number one reason why people ride is because of the freedom of being out in the open, of just not being stuck in a car. It's just so much different than riding in a car, that it's, you know, it's one of those things that it's hard to put into words until you do it. And how this fits into wearing gear is that you can't have one of the number one reasons for why you ride being the freedom, and then criticize the people for the choices that they make while riding. These guys are going really slow, so I'm gonna fix this problem. So that's my main reason for why I don't necessarily agree with calling people squids that don't wear gear, is because you can't say you have the total freedom of riding and then criticize people for the choices that they make because of the freedom that they're expressing. And I just don't think it's fair to lump that into the same category. And, you know, gear is one of those things that is meant to help protect you in an accident. It won't necessarily save your life other than wearing a helmet. You know, your gloves and your boots will keep you from getting injury as far as road rash and possibly breaking an ankle with boots on. But with the gloves on, you're still going to do as much damage as far as breaking bones. You know, you'll still get a broken wrist or anything like that. But it'll keep you from getting the road rash and the abrasions and everything else if you do happen to go down. So more or less, gear is like an injury reducer more so than an injury preventer, because you can still get hurt, you know, pretty bad in an accident even with full gear on. But the number one most important thing is definitely your helmet. And I would never ride with, I don't see how people ride without one. I wear contacts for one thing, so I get a lot of anything that gets in my face, like my eyes or anything. It really bugs the hell out of me, and I can't stand things hitting my face either. So I really prefer to wear a helmet with a shield down, because even when I come to a stop and take off and put my shield up to get a little bit of ventilation, I still get a lot of shit thrown up in my face, and I just don't like it at all. So I always go with that, and the other stuff is just there to help, you know, help to protect me in case something happens. Back to what I was saying before, a jacket, gloves, and boots won't save your life. If you're in a bad enough accident so that you would lose your life, none of those pieces of gear would have made a difference in the long run. The helmet, of course, is completely different. That's the only one thing that will absolutely save your life if you are in an accident. The other stuff is just secondary. And you always hear people with the saying, always wear your gear, and I don't disagree with that at all. I'm a strong supporter of wearing gear. This video isn't meant to try to convince people that it's okay to ride around without gear, because personally I don't think it's the right choice at all, and I definitely would not do it. But it's just part of the freedom of riding if you choose not to. So it's hard to criticize those that don't, whether they, you know, whatever the reason is that they choose not to wear it. I think a lot of people on sport bikes, I kind of touched on this on another video that I did, especially sport bikes, or even, I'll even lump Harleys or cruisers into this category too, because I think a lot of it is an image thing. You see people that ride around with sunglasses on and, you know, tank tops or a t-shirt and sneakers, because they think it looks more cool. And to them it's just strictly an image thing. It's not about the riding, it's not about the enjoyment of riding, it's about being on a flashy fast bike and being so that everyone can see you and see who you are. That's my opinion for why some people do that, and I lump some Harley riders and cruiser riders into that too, because, you know, like a lot of bikers have the image of, you know, like the Hells Angels and other motorcycles clubs have a certain image or portray that they have. You're not going to see a Hells Angel or someone from a motorcycle club or a hardcore Harley rider ride around with a helmet on and safety equipment. They're going to ride with their leather vest on and no helmet, and that will be it, because that fits the image of, you know, their club or what they're trying to portray. If that's their thing, then that's fine too, but the point is that there's still a shit ton of accidents every year with bikes, whether it's your fault or not. So you still have to do what you can to help protect yourself as much as possible. And, you know, that just goes along with riding too, being as alert as possible, always looking out for stuff, because you never know what can pull out in front of you, stop in front of you. So you always have to be on the lookout for everything. I would have to say, from my own personal experience, I would say that from what I see when I'm riding, about 80 to 85% of the bikes that I see on the road, regardless of what kind of bike it is, the people don't wear any gear at all, including a helmet or jackets or boots or anything. You know, I think the most notorious ones are cruiser riders. You know, they hardly ever wear anything at all. I think those are the number one offenders. Number two offenders are definitely sport bikes, because I do see riders quite often with the helmet on, but not as much as I should. They definitely take the second spot, only because cruiser bikes, I hardly ever see anyone with a helmet on. So that's the only reason they get the number one spot. A lot of touring bikes, for some reason, those guys tend to wear the gear quite often. They either have jackets on or helmets on. You know, like enduro type bikes or touring bikes, those guys tend to gear up more. I think because they're more of like the long distance riders, they may be more aware of the inherent risk because of the miles that they may do per year. So they're more inclined to wear more protective gear, just because the more you're on the road, the more your risk increases overall. Since I started riding, there's only been one time that I've ridden without a helmet, one time I rode without a jacket. The time I rode without a helmet, I was test riding a friend's bike that he thought he was having an issue with it, so I took it out for a quick ride. He was in my development that I live in, so I hopped on, just took it off, went down the road, and came back. And a lot of the times people that don't wear a helmet or wear anything at all, they like to try to justify it in their own mind for why they do it. And I did the same thing that day too. I figured, well, I'm only going up the road, I'm coming right back, I'll be gone for less than 5 minutes, it's not a big deal. But the thing is that it is a big deal, because a lot of accidents do happen close to home, and there's no requirement saying you have to ride so many miles or be riding for so many hours before you're eligible to have an accident. It can happen at absolutely any time. So that was a mistake on my part, not wearing my helmet that day. And the other time that I didn't wear my jacket, a Honda Racing leather jacket, it was really thick, really hot, and really heavy. And it was when I had my first CBR. I rode down to the beach one day, and it was like probably mid-90s and extremely humid. It was July, and I said, oh, I'm not going to wear my jacket because it's too hot. And that's another excuse that a lot of people use too, is always too hot to wear gear. But when it comes down to it, I'd rather be sweating at a stoplight and being hot in my jacket than have an accident and be bleeding all over the place, in need of skin grafts and road rash all over your body. And that's far worse than sitting at a light and being hot, as far as I'm concerned. But I think a lot of people use those reasons to try to justify their actions and not wearing gear, saying that with the mentality of like, oh, well, I would, but, you know, etc., for these reasons, this is why I don't. And I often get the I don't wear gear because it's too hot excuse for people that live down south. I don't know what it is. I mean, I can't really compare it, because up here in Maine, it doesn't get that humid and that hot for very long. There are weeks in, you know, like mid to late July and August where it does get like that, but it's not extended like all year long, like out in Florida or Alabama, Georgia, any of those states where it's hot all summer long, almost year round. So I can't really dig those guys for that, but in the same sense, it still falls in the category of, you know, I would rather be hot and sweaty than bloody and bleeding and full of road rash too. Going back to the image factor thing, I think that as far as the cool look that you get, I think you look better with gear on than you do with off. I don't know. Some people think that, I don't know, they just think that not wearing gear looks better, or that makes them more cool. And I don't wear gear for, you know, the cool look at me attention factor. I wear it for its purposes and its reasons. And, you know, if you're going to go out and get gear too, you know, get something that is worth it. You can't go out and buy a pair of, you know, $20 mechanic gloves that you get at like Walmart and think that those are going to protect you in an accident. You know, these gloves that I had, these are Alpine Star. They're a very well respected company. They make really good gear. These are leather. They have really good like knuckle support right up here. So if I were to go down, my hands would not suffer any kind of serious damage, other than, you know, maybe breaking my wrist if it happened to bend that way. But, you know, it's, if you're going to spend the money where it's really going to count. You know, these were $130, and I'm not saying everyone has to go out and spend $100 plus on a pair of gloves, or $500 on a helmet, or $200 or $300 on a jacket. But if you're going to wear the gear for its purposes, it's better to buy the stuff that is actually going to protect you than stuff that is cheap and cheesy and will fall apart and not protect you in an accident like it's supposed to. Cruiser bike, no gear at all. See, those guys there, those were touring bikes, and both those guys had gear on, which goes back to what I was saying earlier about how a lot of touring bike guys tend to wear gear more often than any other types of riders that I do see out there. So in closing, these are just, you know, my personal opinions and my thoughts on the whole thing. You may feel the same, you may feel different about it. Everyone's going to make their own personal choice for the type of protection they're going to wear when they ride, whether they choose to or choose not to. So, you know, if it's your thing to wear all your gear, great. If you don't, you know, that's your thing too. But everyone's got their own opinion and their own right overall. I don't think anyone's personal choice is right or wrong over anyone else's, but it all comes down to what your personal beliefs and what you want to do on your own.